Oh my gosh, my battery is dying. Hi everyone, welcome or welcome back to my channel. If you guys are new here, hi, my name is Vivian, and in today's video we're going to be doing my May wrap-up. As you guys can see, as you guys can tell, I read a total of 13 books. I also DNF'd one book, and I'm going to be talking all about them. Just want to quickly let you guys know that I'm on borrowed time. I don't know if you guys can tell, but it's a little bit on the darker side right now. Lighting is currently really minimal, and I'll probably start dying in like 30 minutes, so I'm gonna try my best to like power through this as quickly as possible. I've also been putting off filming this wrap-up because I don't know why I haven't really been feeling filming this wrap-up, but we're gonna get started because I really need to talk about all of these books. I'm gonna put them back in my bookshelves, and it's just about time to really film this wrap-up. So I do not really have my stats yet because I've not counted them, so I'm gonna put them on the screen. Hopefully I have calculated them when I'm uploading this video. And we've got some really high highs and we've got some really low lows in this wrap-up. I'm pretty sure we have lots of 1-star reads, which is very rare for me. I don't really tend to read 1 to 2-star reads because I usually DNF them, but for some reason all of these books I do not DNF. I just let them go and they end up being really bad reads for me. But we've got, I think, 2 5-star reads, and so we're going to be talking all about them. And I'm going to get started with the first book I read in this whole month, and the first book I read is My Dark Desire by L.J. Shen and Parker S. Huntington. This is actually my first 5-star read. Such a good book. If you guys do not know, this is a part of an interconnected standalone series. You're following retellings, and so this is a Cinderella retelling, and the first book of this whole series is, I think, Beauty and the Beast retelling. I might be wrong. If I'm wrong, I apologize. So you're following FMC Pharaoh and the MMC Zachary. And Pharaoh doesn't have a rich lifestyle. She lives with her stepmom and her 2 stepsisters, and her dad recently passed away, and she wants to sneak into Zach's house to steal a pendant that her stepmom sold to Zach's family. And Zachary is a very rich billionaire, just very rich overall, and when Pharaoh sneaks in to steal that pendant, she ends up getting caught by Zach, and one thing led to another. Zach ends up hiring Pharaoh to be his help. I read it in a reading vlog so you guys can see all of my thoughts, but I love this book so much. It made me giggle and laugh a lot, and I just really liked Pharaoh and Zachary as individuals. Zachary embodies a confident, arrogant, cocky type of demeanor, and I just really liked seeing his growth of being somebody who doesn't really show his feelings too much to being somebody who absolutely adore and is obsessed with Pharaoh. And I love Pharaoh. She's very feisty, very fiery, but she's also certain about the things that she likes and dislikes. I just really liked the characters. They were a breath of fresh air to me. Their relationship was very unique. I really liked that they didn't have expectations with each other, but then they end up really liking and being really obsessed with each other. And I just really like Zach because of the things that he goes through and the way he grows and changes throughout the whole story. I love their relationship. I love that there is no weird third act breakup, and I just really like seeing the plot move forward because there's like lots of romance in this, but there is a mystery plot that you follow with Pharaoh wanting to investigate her father's death. Overall makes this whole story such a complete romance book, and I loved it. So 5 stars for me. The next book I read is Trial of the Sun Queen by Nisha J. Tooley. I read this in the same reading vlog as My Dark Desire, and this is a romantasy. You're following Lore, who has been living in prison for 12 years. And in this universe, there are lots of realms, and she's living in the Aurora King's realm. And one day, something happens in the prison. She ends up getting taken to the Sun King's realm, and for some reason, she joins the trial of the Sun Queen, where she basically competes with 10 other women to become the Sun Queen. And there is a whole mystery behind why she got chosen, why she was taken there, how the Sun King and the Aurora King plays a role in her being in prison for 12 years. And it was a very promising book with a very interesting plot, but I feel like the execution of the world building and the magic system was really bad. And I also didn't like Laura as a character. For somebody who lived in prison all her life and has gone through so much hardship with her life because she was in prison, I would expect that kind of main character to be hard-headed and stubborn and to know what she likes and not like, but her character was just easily swayed, very naive, very immature, and I just didn't enjoy the way that she handles a lot of the things in this book. It was really irritating for me to read, and I also didn't like the main character of this book because you're following 2 POVs, but the other POV you don't really see him often, and you're following like another love interest in this book, and it's just that love interest was really irritating. So this ended up being a 1.5 star read. There is a little bit of spice in this book, but I didn't like the spice at all. It was really cringy. It was just overall not my favorite book. And then I read my other 5-star read, and it is Long Way Down by Kristen Becca Ritchie. This is a chonker of a book. It's like 600 pages. It's so freaking good though. If you guys do not know, this is the the ninth book in the Addicted series. I've been slowly getting through the whole series. You guys can tell from this whole stack. I've been putting this one off for a while because this was basically the last book of this whole series. If you guys don't know the Addicted series, you're following 3 different couples: Lily and Lo, Rose and Connor, Reich and Daisy, and I love each and every one of them to the bones. Like, I truly love them so much. Every single book you're following different couples. So the first 3 books are following Lily and Lo, and then you jump into Rose and Connor's story, and then Reich and Daisy's story, and then you go back to Lily and Lo's story. It's a whole series, and you get really attached to them because it feels like a character study of every single one of these couples. And I just really like seeing a lot of the growth from when they were in the first book to now, and it's so beautiful. The friendship is beautiful, the storytelling is beautiful, and you get sucked into story all the time. I also have a reading vlog on this. You guys can see that reading vlog and see me cry because I cried so much reading this book. It was so good. 5 stars. In that same reading vlog, I read Magnolia Parks Into the Dark by Jessa Hastings. I suddenly forgot her name, but look at how much I annotated this book, because with the Magnolia Parks universe, I've also been crazy annotating those books, and I also have been really enjoying that whole series. These are the books, by the way, the first 4 books, and this is the 5th book. You're following Magnolia and BJ's story, and if you guys do not know this whole series, it is basically a character study of rich people in London, and you're following so many different characters, and the main couple is Magnolia Parks and BJ Valentine, and then there is Daisy Hates and Christian Hems as well. However, this one wasn't really my favorite. Overall, I do like Daisy and Christian more than Magnolia and BJ, but this book was just way too long. I think it was the length that made this book really quite unbearable to read. It got really boring by like the 400-page mark, and I do like Magnolia and BJ's relationship overall with this book, but I feel like BJ's character for me will never redeem himself, and so reading through this, it was a little bit painful because I knew for a fact that I would never be able to understand BJ's character, and I just really didn't like that it got a little bit boring. It was just so much information with no need for that much information. This book is very beautiful in its storytelling though, because there's a lot of talks on grief. Also, you get to dive into all the different relationships, family and friends in this book. Those plot lines were interesting, but it was just way too long, like too much info. So this ended up being a 3.5 stars. I still like the series. I'm still gonna continue on reading, obviously, but not my favorite for sure. And then I read a Kindle book. This is on KU. It is a Learn Your Lesson by Candy Steiner. It's a part of this Hockey Interconnected Standalone romance series, and this is the 3rd book, and you're following, I don't even remember the main character's name, not gonna lie. But what I can tell you guys, I didn't enjoy this book at all. This is a 1-star read. I'm very disappointed in this book because I actually really like Candy Steiner's writing. But with this book, the main problem I have is the power dynamic the MMC has over the FMC. Basically, FMC is a single dad, and he has a 5-year-old kid, I think. His wife passed away. He still hasn't really moved on from that. And then he needs to find a nanny for his kid. And so the FMC, who is actually a teacher in his kid's school, he ended up hiring her because she's really good with his kid. Sorry about that, I had an emergency for a bit, but yeah, anyway, let's talk about this book. And then for some reason, she ends up having to live in his house, and then they fall in love. The FMC holds lots of power over the FMC because the FMC, first of all, has never really dated anyone. She only had 1 boyfriend, and she's only ever been with 1 guy. And so she really views the MMC as somebody who's giving her lots of love and attention and affection. There's also the MMC not really being able to forget about his wife, his dead wife, and it was just really hard to read about that because he only finally realized he's over it at the 85% mark. So he's been stringing the FMC along throughout that whole period and being very wishy-washy about his feelings for the FMC, and it was really hard for me to read about that. I really disliked it. There was no groveling whatsoever. The FMC fell into his arms almost immediately, and I just didn't like seeing that. So I rated this a 1 star. I really rate books 1 star because I usually just stop reading if I don't like it, but I just wanted to see if there was any redemption with this book, and there was not. It got even worse by the end of it, which is why it's a 1 star. Thankfully, I ended up reading a good book after that. I read Betting on You by Lynn Painter, and this is also in another reading vlog. I will link it down below. This is Lynn Painter's YA romance book. I think the one she released after The Do-Over, and this is about Bailey and Charlie. They both met when they were younger. Bailey just came back home from visiting her dad, and her parents recently got divorced, and Charlie has divorced parents, and they met on the plane. They got off on the wrong foot. They were still like kids at that point. And then 3 years later, they end up meeting again because they were interning in the same company. And at that time, they're both high school seniors. And in the workplace, they saw their coworkers flirting. They made a bet that guys and girls cannot be friends, that they'll end up falling in love. Charlie believes that they cannot be friends, and Bailey believes they can be friends. There's also some sort of fake dating going on in this book. And yeah, I really like this book because it was just a really fresh romance, and I just wanted to read something that had no spice. It was easy to read at that point. I love the banter, I love the witty conversations they had, and so going into this I was really happy about it because I had so much fun reading this. And overall I rated this a 4.25 stars. The reason why it's not above a 4.5 was because there was a lot of push and pull in Charlie's end of the relationship, where he didn't really know if he actually really liked her or not, and I just didn't really like seeing that. So it was a 4.25 though, because I really liked the ending and how they got together, and I really liked that they got together at the end of this book, and it was just really cute overall. I then read a contemporary romance, 7 Summers by Page 2, and in this book you're following one main protagonist called Olivia, nicknamed Liv, and she has been living in this Cornish seaside beach town all her life. I think this is in England, by the way, if you're wondering. And basically she went to college, I think in like London or something, learned sculpting, came back after graduating in order to earn money to actually go back to London to get a job in sculpting. And one day she ends up meeting Finn, I think, who used to go to high school with her. They end up having a summer fling, they fell in love, all of that. And then something happens to Liv's life where she ends up having to stay in this beachside town forever. However, Finn actually has a job in LA. And so Liv and Finn made this pact where if they're still single every single summer, they will spend the summer together. And they've spent 6 summers together at this point. It is the 7th summer, and one day Liv meets Tom, who is actually her new tenant. Actually, no, not really tenant. He rented the space below her house for a month, and they end up falling in love. And then Finn comes back and a shitstorm happens. But basically, you're following that. It is semi-love triangle, but it's pretty obvious who she's gonna end up with at the end of this. I did enjoy the writing, and I did enjoy the process of getting to know Olivia as a character and seeing her mature throughout these summers. But one thing I did enjoy was the epilogue, and I felt like the rating of this book really went down because of the epilogue. I just felt like if you wanted to add the epilogue, either make it really long and just make it another section of the book, or just forego the epilogue completely. And it's very hard to explain if you guys do not read the book because it's a spoiler. And then I bumped it down to a 3.25. I just didn't like the ending. The ending portion just threw everything off. So this ended up being a 3.25 stars. And then I read Spells of Forgetting by Adrienne Young. This is, I would say, not a fantasy standalone, but like maybe a magical realism type of vibe, witchy mystery type of vibe. You're following Emery Blackwood, who lives in this, I'm pretty sure, island near Seattle, and it's a very haunting type of island. I'm talking about like witchy stuff going on in that island that the people who live there knows about, but the people who don't live there kind of thinks it's just really magical. Basically, Emery lives there her whole life, and one day during her senior graduation, her best friend dies, and it is told to be a murder, and August, who is the love of her life, actually ends up being accused of that murder. August then leaves with his mom to escape this island and never comes back. 12 years later, he comes back to actually bury his mom's ashes. She asked to be buried in the island, and they end up dredging up the old memories of Emery's best friend's death and what really went on. There is a whole mystery plot in this, and I just really like this book. I had a really good time reading this. It was just really easy to read. I love Adrienne Young's writing. I've read her YA fantasy duology and I just really like it, and I think this is her debut adult book. However, there are some qualms I have about this book in a sense where it didn't really feel very adult. I thought it was actually YA, but apparently it's adult. It didn't really feel adult. The main characters in this book didn't really have a very adult voice to them. Second of all, the ending of this book was just really fast paced. It was too quick. I just didn't feel like it was very climactic because it was rushed really badly. But I did really like the setting, and I think the setting of this book really helped. It was really eerie, it was really atmospheric, it was very creepy, and this just gave such good Halloween vibes. If you guys read it in the fall, it'll be so good. I kind of regret reading it right now because it would be so good in the fall. This was an amazing standalone. I rated this 4 stars. I think the ending was just too fast. I didn't really enjoy that, but I really like the romance. I love the mystery plot. It was just so confusing. You really know who actually did it. So yeah, 4 stars, 4 spells for forgetting. And then the next 5 books I'm going to talk about is a part of my 24-hour readathon that I'm pretty sure I uploaded before this video. So I'm not going to talk too much about it, but the first book I read is Life's Too Short by Abby Jimenez. This is a part of another interconnected standalone series, and I've read the first 2 books also in reading vlogs. This is the 3rd one. I just want to get through her backlist, and so that's why I picked this up. And this ended up being a 2.5 star read. You're following Adrian and Vanessa. They're both neighbors, and Vanessa's a YouTuber, and she thinks she has an illness called ALS because her mom, her grandma, and her sister all had ALS. Adrian and Vanessa met through a meet cute. Vanessa basically ends up adopting her sister's baby, and she has to take care of the baby, but sometimes she needs to take a break. She ends up asking Adrian for help. They end up falling in love in that sense. The romance was great, and I really like the banter between the characters. I really like how they got together, but I didn't like the portrayal of the disease that Vanessa supposedly has, and the ending just felt like a cop-out. So this ended up being a 2.5, my lowest rated Abby Jimenez book, but yeah, I just didn't really enjoy this. So, and then I read Yellowface by R.F. Kuang, which is my only lit fic book I think this month, and this also ended up being only a 3-star read. In this book, you're following June, who is actually an author, and she is friends with Athena, who is also another author. One day something happens. There's a freak accident, Athena passes away, and then June ends up stealing Athena's manuscript, publishes it under her name, Juniper Song, and then you go through a whole case of June as she tries to go through her life post stealing the manuscript, post publishing it, and you get through so many dark things in this book. It is a very, very dark lit fic book. What I really like about this book was initially it felt very eye-opening and very thought-provoking in a sense where June is not a likable main character and she's done really, really bad things, and she's not a protagonist, she's an antagonist. But the way R.F. Kuang writes her character, you kind of understand where she's coming from, and you know what she's doing, the things she's doing, and she kind of rationalizes her actions, and you kind of end up understanding it. But as it went on, it got really irritating and annoying, and I really strive with liking the characters I'm reading, and so this was really hard because I didn't like June at all. By the end of it, it was just really dark. It was just really, really out of pocket at that point, and so it ended up being a 3-star read because the ending, it just felt like there was no redeeming part of this, and so yeah, 3 stars. And then I read Rule of the Aurora King by Nietzsche Tuli, which is the 2nd book following Trial of the Sun Queen. Now with this book, I did end up liking this one a lot more than the first book. Well, not a lot more, a little bit more, because you're following a different MMC in this. You're following Nadir, who is the Aurora King's son. And so you're following Nadir and Lore's romantic relationship, and I did like Nadir as a character. He had morals, he had things that he wanted to accomplish, and he was very, very logical in the way he acts and the way he makes decisions. But Lore, even though she got a little bit better in this, Lore was still irritating, still annoying, still very immature, and still lacked world building, still didn't really understand the magic. So it didn't really feel that special, which is also why it ended up being a 2-star read. I will still read the 3rd book, which is coming out this month, in the month of June. That says something, I guess. It's a very trashy romantasy, I would say. Not the best, but like not the worst. We're down to our last 2 books. Hopefully it's not too dark, but I'm gonna try to up the brightness if it's too dark. I read Next of Kin by Hannah Bonham Young. Another book I didn't really enjoy. I just realized that in that reading vlog, I didn't read a lot of good books, which is why I'm in a semi-reading slump right now. But in this book, you're following the FMC and NMC. I forgot her names. Chloe wants to adopt her baby sister, and Warren wants to adopt his little brother. But then they go through this adoption process and they realize that they don't fit the adoption criteria. Chloe lacks in the financial department and Warren lacks in the housing department. So they end up striking this thing where Warren basically lives in Chloe's apartment and he pays rent, and so she ends up getting financially independent and Warren has housing. In the beginning, I really liked the familial relationship they had with their siblings and also the relationship they had together. As things moved on, it felt like everything was tell and no show, and so you don't really get to see a lot of interactions between Warren and Chloe, and then suddenly just end up falling in love. For some reason, they liked each other and they fell really deep, really quick. It was love by like the halfway point, and I couldn't really grasp my head around it, and the romance became really weird from then on because it's a romance book, so the romance is gonna push the plot forward. But because I don't really like the romance, it was really hard to read about it. So this ended up being a 1.5 5-star read. I was very disappointed. Very, very disappointed. Yeah, it was just not it. The romance was just not it. It was just love too quickly. No tension, no pining whatsoever. They just suddenly like each other, and that's it. The last book I read in the month of May is The Call of the Void by S.M. Geiler. This is the third book in the Shadows and Crowns series, and if you do not know that series, in the first book you're following Cassia, who is a mercenary. She earns money in order to give medicine to her mentor, and one day she ends up getting caught by the king, and it's really dangerous for her because she's actually a survivor of the plague in this world, and if you're a survivor of the plague you actually end up getting killed. But the king doesn't want to kill her. The king wants to use her in order to figure out how to fix the plague, how to find an antidote for the plague, and she ends up having to work with the captain of the king's guard, a lander, and they end up going through a whole journey from there. It's so much more than what I just said, because by the third book of this whole series you're following so many things. The world building and the system, just so complex, so dense. It was so good. I really liked it because it was a lot of fantasy elements. It was done really well. You get to see lots of growth with the main characters. You get to see lots of growth with Cassia, which I really liked. Just the things that she thinks about, the decisions she makes, and the way she rationalizes her thoughts. I love seeing the turmoil going around her and how she kind of juggles the relationship she has with Alander, with her friends. This ended up being a 4-star read, which is the highest, I'm pretty sure, in the whole series I've rated. But the reason why it's not higher than a 4 stars is because I still feel like there are some parts of the book where it's really, really slow sometimes, where there's just too much detail for no reason. And also second, there is spice in this book, but I feel like the spice is not really necessary. I don't see the need to add spice in this. We're also really good, to the point where I'm actually excited to pick up the 4th book of this series. So yeah, I rated this 4 stars. Really like this and really, really happy with this. And that is it for my May wrap up. I am so happy I am done with this. Oh, also the book that I DNF'd is Queen of Myth and Monsters by Scarlett St. Clair. You guys want to know. It is the 2nd book following King of Battle and Blood. I did like the 1st book. I didn't like the 2nd book. I gave it 50 pages and I didn't like it at all. There was something about the book where I just felt like it was just spice. Anyway, that is it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed watching this wrap up, watching me talk about all of these books. If you guys like this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel. It will mean a lot to me, and hopefully I'll get more videos up after this one. I'm in a bit of a slump. I haven't been really wanting to read, so I haven't been filming reading vlogs, but hopefully I will get back into motion. I am going on a vacation after this, and hopefully that will kind of clear my head a bit, and then I'll be able to read more during my vacation. So that is it for today's video. Thank you for watching once again, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!